Luigi, and what I'm going to do is show you how to piece together the pie piece and the center square. So with AccuQuilt, the benefit of doing the Drunkards path with the AccuQuilt cutting system is you get these notches. See that notch right there? It's kind of hard because it's white, but there's a notch right there. And then there's also a notch right there. So what I'm going to do is put right sides together. So this is the right side of my background and this is the right side of the blue. You put them together. And as you can see here, the notches line up, but that's not how I'm going to sew it actually. The tip number 2 is to make sure that when you are sewing these two pieces together, what you want to do is start so that the top parts of the square and the pie piece are sort of centered together. So I don't know if you can see that there, but that's what that looks like. Now I'm going to start piecing together. Now I do have the tape here that shows me my 1/4 of an inch seam line here. And you have to know your machine. That's another bonus tip. But you have to know where your 1/4 inch seam is. And then this foot isn't technically a 1/4 inch foot, but because I have the tape here, I'm able to see kind of where that 1/4 inch lies. So here we go. Now I just start with taking a few stitches in, and then tip number 3 is to let the feed dogs do the work. So what happens is you're going to take this bottom part and you're going to sort of pull that straight. And then remember how we cut the blue pie piece on the bias? That bias gives us just a little stretch. So what I'm doing is I am taking the blue pie piece and I'm sort of pulling it that way. And I'm taking the white center square and I'm pulling it down and a little that way. So here we go. I know it's kind of hard to see, guys, but hang in there with me. Now, when you feed it in, you're feeding it on that 1/4 inch line and it's gonna feel wonky, but just trust your feed dogs. So I'm gonna stop right here with my needle down at the notch. And so as you can see here, hopefully you can see that, the notches are almost perfectly lined up there. I have a stiletto here, which you'll need when we get towards the end. But right now, again, I'm just taking this blue pie piece and I'm pulling it slightly that way. And then I'm also taking this white piece. I'm actually using my middle finger. I'm pulling it down and a little to my left. So I'm kind of going like this, just like that, just so slightly. And I'm allowing the feed dogs to pull the fabric through. So watch. And the beauty of this featherweight is you can go pretty slow. Now, this is where I start using my stiletto because as you can see here, we're getting towards the end and I want to make sure that this part, this point and that point matches up as best as possible. So I'm going to take my stiletto and I'm taking the stiletto and I'm using that same motion of pushing it towards my right while taking my middle finger and pulling this white piece down like towards me. So here we go. And I'm just taking a little stitch at a time so that it could just get in there. So we're at the end and that's it. Now, what happens is when you're done, this is what it looks like. I'm going to pan this out. Hang on a second, guys. So when you're done, it looks a little wonky here, right? See how it's curved? Remember how we cut this on the bias and you're like, oh my stars, how is that going to really finish out? Well, here's the trick. The trick is pressing. And so I am going to take my clapper, which I love this thing, and I'm going to take my steam fast iron. I'm going to iron. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see here, as it's sitting on my ironing pad, it looks a little wonky, and here's the back side. So what I'm going to do is just place the seam side down towards the pressing pad. And then I'm going to take my iron. I'm going to press away or towards, press my seam towards the blue pie piece. And I'm just pressing towards the pie piece. And when I'm done, I just put my clapper down for like 2 seconds, 1001, 1002. And that's it. Now look how nice that looks. Ta-da! And then here's the back. Ta-da! And it's really as simple as that. So just to recap, tip number 1, it matters how you cut your fabrics. You want to make sure that your pie piece is cut on the bias as much as possible. And then your center square piece, you want to cut on the lengthwise grain. Tip number 2 is to make sure that you try to make sure that when you sew, your notches are lining up. Tip number 3 is to allow the feed dogs to do the work. And what I mean by that is when the 2 fabrics are underneath the presser foot, you're going to put your center square piece down. You're going to make sure that when you are sewing, you are pulling your pie piece to your left, just ever so slightly. And then you're going to hold your white piece or your center square piece down and a little towards the left. And together, you're kind of making like this weaving. You know, it kind of feeds in. Instead of traditionally going in straight like this, it kind of weaves in like that. And then when you're done, you're going to press it with the seam side going towards your pie piece. And that's it, guys. I'll see you again. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Stay tuned for part number 2 in this series. Bye-bye.